All right, now that I've clicked record on the audio, let's get started. Hello, my name is Isis and this is Isis Says Hi. I like to make a lot of YouTube videos about topics that matter to me, and sometimes I do be vlogging. I've been trying to figure out like a better setup. Whoopsies. So I'm hoping that this setup works. I hope I'm holding the mic correctly too, because my boyfriend is a stickler for that. And today we're going to be talking about purity culture. It's something that I have grown up in. Shocking. It probably would be shocking if you knew me in real life. I've grown up in purity culture, and I can be firsthand to tell you that it is very much not really real. And if it is real, wow. Because I have seen folks who have done a lot in their heyday and are rewarded in a way. And I've seen people who've done absolutely none of that, and it didn't matter. I've also seen it used as a way to shame and harm other people. I do not like that. And I've used it in the past when I was younger and uninformed to do the same. I always feel really apologetic for that and sad that I've done that. It's been a long journey. Purity culture has done such a huge amount of damage to not only myself, but probably countless other folks who have grown up in the church just like me. So let's get into it. So purity culture has a lot of different definitions, but usually it refers to promoting a biblical perspective of purity before marriage, so not having sex before marriage. Evangelicals use tools like purity pledges, symbols such as purity rings, and events like purity balls to advocate for this perspective. I have done the purity pledge, but not the rings. I did want to get one when I was younger, and that was purely because of the Jonas Brothers. And I've never had purity balls, and those seem a little creepy, but yeah, if you could just focus on me, babe. Women are often tasked with controlling men's sexual desires by dressing modestly and not enticing them, as sexual activity outside of marriage is forbidden. As a girly who has a big bosom, that was probably the bane of my existence. I could not wear certain clothes because my boobs were too big. And while I understood that, it is really hard to try to find fancy clothes that are not crazy revealing, especially as I got older. I remember one time I come back to my childhood church and was saying hi to a congregation member, and the first thing they had said to me was, "Your bosom, your cleavage is out." Not a hi, hello, how are you? I hadn't been there in months, probably a year. And the same thing had happened countless times because I have a big bosom. I try my best to work with it in clothing, but sometimes it just doesn't always work. And so it's always frustrating when that is the response, especially to a body type that you can't control. And I know that's one of the biggest holdups with a lot of Black women and women of color. Women who fail to control themselves are labeled as stumbling blocks to men, as they can lead men away from their spiritual path, because apparently men are not in charge of their own minds and bodies. But women are. We have to. Men are taught to train their minds using techniques like bouncing the eyes when a sexual thought or feeling arises. My personal favorite, God said, pluck them out. I'm kidding. It wasn't God, it was Jesus. I'm sorry. In this context, a woman's sexual purity is often seen as her entire value. For examples of purity culture in action, you can look at the Christian YouTube channels that everybody loves to talk about. Girl Defined, which is run by Bethany Beal and Kristen Clark. Classically Abby, which is run by Abby Shapiro, who is the sister of Ben Shapiro. Both channels, the most popular ones that I know anyways, advocate for abstaining from sex before marriage, dressing modestly, and devoting one's life to God. Young girls are frequently taught to avoid even thinking about sex until marriage. So sorry. Young girls are frequently taught to avoid even thinking about sex until marriage, reinforcing the notion that their virginity status is all that matters. This teaching not only represses their natural feelings about sex, but also suggests that their value as human beings is based solely on their decisions about sex. I remember that being one of the biggest parts of me growing up, is feeling so ashamed of my body because of how curvy I was, and not really knowing what to do or how to control it, because how can I control that? I was in my big t-shirt era, sweats, big old shirts, to cover and hide as much of myself as possible because I felt so ashamed and because I didn't know what else to do with my body. I can cover up as much as I want, but it doesn't matter, and it never mattered. I remember one time, but when I was like 18, I was in a bonnet, I think. I was looking crazy and crusty, and a man still tried to holler at me. So it doesn't really matter what you look like. Even when I was younger, I was catcalled, like 12, 13. To say that young girls are the ones at fault is so harmful and hurtful and caused a lot of tough things for me growing up. Despite its origins in evangelical Christianity, the idea of purity is valued by many, including non-Christians. Purity culture rests on a global, religious, and culturally diverse foundation of gender and sexual control. For instance, Mormons use the term worthiness, and Muslims refer to it as honor culture. Purity culture enforces strict, stereotype-based gender roles. Men are expected to be strong leaders, while wives and mothers should be beautiful, feminine, kind, and supportive of their husbands. It teaches us that women are responsible for men's sexual thoughts and actions, thus they must dress, talk, walk in ways that do not inspire sexual thoughts in men. This teaching is based on the assumption that gender is binary and that heterosexual desire is the only proper and natural form of sexual desire. Additionally, the white American evangelical Christian purity movement is rooted in nationalistic and white supremacist ideas. White American women may feel an unfair burden to maintain purity, while women of color and other cultures may feel they must strive for purity because it is not presumed they were born with it. I had a whole little rant that was there, and I didn't like it because I know I was improvising. And now that I'm here editing, I can now say this better. Because I grew up so steeply in purity culture and had a very, very bad people-pleasing problem when I was younger, it still exists. Let's not kid ourselves. It's just not as terrible. I used to try to be like this pure, high and mighty kind of person. A big part of it was because I thought that's what would get me the brownie points, allow me to like win at life. If I stay this track that they keep preaching to me, I'll be the baddest and be the best and have like the greatest life. And that was I wasn't true. Like a lot of those moments I very much regret, because I tried to push that onto other people as well, because I have a big bosom. But yeah, my hair is very different. That was when I just took out the braids and they're back in. But anyways, sorry. When I was growing up, I would fight so hard to be and look as pure as possible because I was so curvy, because my boobs were so big. Ignoring the fact that purity is not real, for starters. And secondly, I don't need to prove anything because I'm 13, and that should be enough to know to not be harmful towards a child. Crazy idea. There is so much policing over my body and what I'm supposed to wear, how I'm supposed to look, and no one has stopped to think about the fact that, like, why are we policing a 13-year-old about her body that she can't control when we should be holding adults accountable for having to police kids in the first place? Like, it's crazy to tell me to cover up because a person overall can't control themselves, so I have to cover up so they can be better controlled. Let's talk about like self-accountability, right? Let's talk about accountability in general. No one should just feel an urge to harm someone else because they look really hot. Like, what is this about? I was trying to prove myself to be as pure as possible, so that I can feel worthy. And I was already worthy, and it is not my job. You should be talking to adults and other people who apparently can't control their hands and their eyes. Like, that sounds like a them problem, not a me problem. Okay. Bye. And it's taken a while for me to learn that I am worth it regardless of what other people think. And then also just striving to look and seem like a better person overall when in society I'm already told that I'm not is even more rougher. And nobody's perfect, but we all are worth it. I shouldn't have to prove my worth. Let's continue. Purity culture emerged in the 1990s when children of the 1960s era sexual revolution became parents. I always find that ironic. The baby boomers were wild back in their day, and then all of a sudden they either become parents or whatever, and they just flip a switch. And I'm like, but you guys were radical in all of the ways, and now apparently I'm not allowed. What had happened here? During this time, AIDS was the leading cause of death for men aged 25 to 44 in the US, and teen pregnancy rates were high. There was also a rise in the number of people engaging in premarital sex during the 1970s. Only 2% of American women had more than 10 sexual partners before marriage in the 1970s. By the 1990s, that figure had risen to 10%. Evangelicals were concerned about the negative effects of sex outside of marriage and sought to promote biblical ethics regarding sexual activity within marriage. And because everything has always started with Reagan, in 1981, the Reagan administration federally funded abstinence-only sex education curriculum. Religious right groups such as Eagle Forum and Focus on the Family, Jen from Fundy Fridays, I believe, has done a thing on Focus on the Family. I used to love them when I was younger, but they were also the only radio station I was pretty much allowed to listen to. I'm pretty sure it's Focus on the Family. Anyways, religious right groups such as Eagle Forum and Focus on the Family have continuously fought against comprehensive sex education in public schools. In 1992, Richard Ross, a youth ministry consultant at Lifeway Christian Resources, proposed the True Love Waits campaign, which Southern Baptists adopted a year later. The campaign introduced purity pledges where teenagers and young adults vow to abstain from sex until marriage. That was part of my pledge when I had to pledge into the youth group that I was in when I was younger. I remember somebody being like, I'm just not going to say that part because I don't believe it. And they really didn't. They didn't say that part when it came up. The campaign included purity pledges where teenagers and young adults vowed to abstain from sex until marriage. The movement gained significant attention with events like the 1994 rally in Washington, D.C., where 210,000 commitment cards were displayed on the National Mall between the Capitol and the Washington Monument. The original pledge from True Love Waits reads, "Believing that true love waits, I make a commitment to God, my family, those I date, and my future mate to be sexually pure until the day I enter marriage." It is so close to the one that I had to say. That's insane. I accidentally muted the mic. Josh Harris's 1997 book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, promoted abstinence and courting as alternatives to dating. I was so down for that. I thought that was the coolest idea. Courting is literally dating. It's just way more restrictive. That's it. The book became a central text in purity culture, though Harris later expressed concerns about its impact and asked for its discontinuation. He also, I believe, went through like a period of deconstruction as well, because he realized like the impact and the harm that his book did. Like a huge part of his journey with Christianity and deconstruction, I'm pretty sure, is literally because of the book and the popularity of the book. Symbols like purity rings were popularized by the Christian ministry, the silver ring thing, and purity balls, which is still so crazy. Purity balls, or father-daughter purity balls, would have never been able to go. I think we know why. Are formal dance events attended by fathers and their daughters that promote virginity until marriage for teenage girls. At the balls, fathers would often sign a pledge that they would be an example of purity and model integrity for their daughters. The dances were originally conceived in 1998 by a California couple, Randy and Lisa Wilson, to celebrate God's design and life's little growth spurts. Purity culture also influenced contemporary Christian music with songs promoting abstinence. DC Talk's I Don't Want It included lyrics like, "So just wait for the mate that's straight from..." I need to say this. Stop it. "So just wait for the mate that's straight from God and don't have sex till you tie the knots." Purity culture was also endorsed by celebrities like Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez, and the Jonas Brothers. I really wanted a purity ring because I thought that was so fire. Man. The movement promised that those who waited until marriage would be rewarded with fulfilling sexual relationships. However, a lot of folks who were getting married struggled with switching from a sex is wrong to a sex is okay now mindset. And I've heard that a lot. Between 1995 and 2002, after the launch of the True Love Waits movement, there was a significant decrease in sexual activity for girls aged 15 to 17 and boys aged 15 to 18. The proportion of never married females, 15 to 17 years old, who had sexual intercourse fell from 38% in 1995 to 30% in 2002. For male teenagers, the percentage of those who had sexual experiences fell in both age groups, from 43 to 31% when they were 15 to 17, and from 75 to 64% when they were 18 to 19. Teen pregnancies fell dramatically over the next 30 years as well. However, it is unclear how much credit the movement deserves for these trends. According to a 2009 study, the sexual behavior of teens who took a purity pledge doesn't differ from that of relatively similar non-pledgers. Another study discovered that those who took the pledge had the same rate of sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, or infections as non-pledgers. Girls raised within the purity culture mindset will begin to experience a series of identity crises because of the immense amount of cognitive dissonance they experience. When one is constantly being told any thoughts that they have, at least sexual thoughts that they have, are unnatural and evil, a great amount of guilt and shame can arise from within. There's this theory called the chewing gum metaphor, and it kind of reminded me of the show Chewing Gum, and I'm like, oh, is this where it came from? There's something called the chewing gum metaphor, and that taught girls that if they had sex before marriage, they were no better than a chewed up piece of gum to abstinent boys. These teachings resulted in feelings of guilt and shame, as profound ignorance about sex and sexuality, which many men and women are still dealing with today. This is particularly visible in girls who might begin to realize that they're queer, as these feelings can begin manifesting as internalized homophobia. The same shame and guilt can rise in heterosexual girls when developing a crush on a boy or thinking about intimacy. These issues can extend into adulthood, affecting their understanding of boundaries, consent, safe sex, and healthy relationships. While much of the research on purity culture has concentrated on how the ideology has affected women and girls, these same gender expectations affirm an unrealistic view of masculinity and male sexuality. The expectation that men pursue sexual encounters as conquests has led some men to question their manhood and, for some, even their sexual identity. Despite criticisms, church leaders and lawmakers continue to endorse purity culture, with significant funding allocated to abstinence-only sex education programs that do not work. According to a report from Sex Education for Social Change, Congress has allocated more than $2.1 billion, taxpayer dollars, by the way, to abstinence-only until marriage sex education programs between 1996 and the 2018 fiscal year. In other cases, there have been medical implications. Patients can be diagnosed with vaginismus, a physical tightening of the pelvic floor that can be triggered by a psychological reaction to being taught to withhold sexuality and the use of shame to urge women to not have sex before marriage. Past studies on vaginismus have not been able to link the condition to strict abstinence education, but scholars have acknowledged the difficulty of acquiring subjects for studies due to the nature of the condition. According to a 2019 study published by Cambridge University, women in Arab Muslim communities can suffer from vaginismus as a result of cultural teachings about sex and sexuality. Limiting sex education in churches and schools has also contributed to higher rates of teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, and preventable gynecological cancers than those who did not take such a pledge. Many Asian American Christian women are familiar with the intersection of purity culture and anti-Asian racism, which they say has existed among white conservative Christians. Because Asian women have transcontinental history of being hypersexualized and fetishized through exoticism and militarism in Asian nations, sexual purity theologies are linked to white supremacy. The sexually pure Virgin Mary, usually associated with white women, became the number one reality every woman thought they should pursue, in contrast to the whore woman, the promiscuous woman, often depicted also as a foreign woman throughout the Bible, from the book of Hosea to Revelation. Some forms of racialized misogyny can be traced back to the European Church's long-standing hierarchical dualism between body and spirit. Anything related to the body was considered sinful, and women and people of color were assumed to be closer to the body. I would know. It's a bit of a sour note, but that is the end of my research thus far for purity culture. I'm happy to talk more about it, to go in more depth in detail. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. I understand the need to control the safety of your kids, especially if you grew up in a really crazy time. But that's the thing about life, is that it's gonna smack your kids in the face regardless of what you do. And the best you can do is just be there for them and support them and care for them. Not try to take over every detail of their life. And how you think and view sex is fully in your purview. If you think, or if you want to wait till marriage, fine. If you don't, fine. You are in charge of your body. And as long as you are consenting to anything that happens involving yourself and your body and respecting the consent of others, I think it's okay. I think you're okay. And if you need to hear it, you're worth it. You don't need a culture or people to tell you that. You are inherently worth it, regardless of how many people and society wants to tell you different. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. I am My Sis Says Hi. I'm probably never gonna vlog again. Hopefully, I'll get back into the swing and do some more. I have like 2 other scripts that I'm excited to do. Also, I'm wearing a sweater because it's incredibly cold in my apartment. I make it very cold. I know that it's probably like high 90s right now. I can't believe my phone hasn't gone off, honestly, this whole time. Thank God. Thanks for watching. I hope this was enough information. I hope you learned something. I hope, let me know what else you want to see. My sources will be down below as always, and any other videos that I think would be helpful in understanding purity culture. Yeah, I'll see you later. Bye.